Welcome to Wellsprings of Faith. My name is Father Jürgen Liias. I am a Catholic priest. I serve on the staff as a senior priest in the neighboring community of Stoneham at St. Patrick's Church, but I live here in Melrose, where I've actually lived here for 33 years, and we've been doing this show, Wellsprings of Faith, for 20 of those years, so it's great to be with you. It's a program really about faith, a person's journey in faith, and the fruit of that faith in their lives and in the life of our community. I want to welcome Jere Vincent to our show today. He's a new friend who I just met a couple of months ago at a men's breakfast that I speak at, and he is the head of the New England Mission Foundation, and we're going to talk a little bit about the work of that particular foundation. But first, we want to talk about you. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Jürgen. It's so wonderful to be here today.
Well, this is really a show about, as it say in the evangelical word, testimonies, you know, about how people have come to faith in Christ and the fruit of that faith in their lives. So as far back as you can want to go ahead and talk about your own faith journey.
Well, that can be quite a story, I'll tell you.
Well,
so it's interesting because, you know, I grew up in New England. I've been here all my life. I live in New Hampshire, near the Portsmouth area. And I actually grew up in a family that did not have really a deep faith tradition. You know, my mother and father, my mother was Catholic. My father worked at a university. And he, you know, it was very, I would say, if anything, very kind of scientific, very, you know, science-based, very skeptical about a lot of things. And growing up, I don't remember really much discussion about church other than my mother going maybe at Christmas time, maybe Easter kind of thing.
Nominal Catholic.
Nominal Catholic, you would say that. And I remember it was interesting, though. My brother got confirmed, and I remember going to that confirmation, and there was an older...
Was he older or younger?
He was younger. He was younger at this time.
So you didn't get confirmed?
I did not get confirmed, but it was almost something in our town, and that was Durham, that people would kind of be like, oh, well, they're going to get confirmed, and it was, you know, kind of this thing. So my brother got confirmed, and...
Was that sort of his own decision at some... I mean, it wasn't your mother was taking him to church to get confirmed.
No.
Some of his peers were getting confirmed?
Peers were getting confirmed, so it was one of those...
okay, so that's how that happened.
And, you know, I think it also was the Catholic Church also had a strong youth group, so I think there was, you know, all these things that kind of tied together that were important for that. But what ended up happening, I never forget that night going there, and they had a priest who came in from Massachusetts, of all places, and he was preaching I don't know what it was exactly, the terminology, but it was kind of the sermon that tied together for the confirmation, and it was a very fire and brimstone sermon. And I'll never forget my mother coming from that and being like, why did they bring that person up here? Why did they, you know? And I was like, why would I want to have anything? Like, it seemed to be something I couldn't really understand what it was all about. But really through my high school years, and it really wasn't until a very interesting experience took place. And I was up at the Appalachian Mountain Club up in northern New Hampshire, and it involves three things. It involves a man, it involves a mountain, and it involves an encounter with God.
Wow.
I don't know if you'd like to hear the story.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what this show's all about.
Excellent.
And being a mountain climber myself, I'm an AMC member.
Are you really?
And I've had many a spiritual experience, I'll tell you later, on the mountains of New Hampshire.
Well, then you must know this well. Pinkham Notch and up in that area. I was working up there as a baker, of all things. I was assistant baker. And at that time, we used to work 11 days on, 3 days off, and I was on my 3 days off. And I was up hiking in the mountains, and if you've hiked up there, you know, when you go to the top of a mountain, you get to the top, you sit down, you kind of, you know, and there's other people kind of spread out, but people spread out over the top of the mountain, you know, they know, you know, and I'm sitting there looking out, and it's this beautiful view and this vista, and I remember it was like a gorgeous day, much like today, and all of a sudden, I look over and I see this man coming. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's like, you know, because kind of the mountain etiquette, as you know, is you always kind of spread out a little bit.
Right. He's coming right towards you.
He's coming right, he looks at me, he looks kind of around, I look out of the corner of my eye, and he's coming at me. And I remember this guy, he had grayish hair, he had a big green Kelty Tioga pack on, and he comes down and sits right next to me. And I said, this is kind of odd, isn't it? And I said, huh, you know, and...
By the way, were you alone?
I was alone.
Oh, all right.
I was alone.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I was a little
So I
bit.
get the scene. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
sitting
So
there
you get the
alone.
scene. So I'm
Yeah.
sitting there alone. I'm I've got a small day pack. He's got
Yeah.
this big Kelty Tioga bag. Sits right down next to me, and I look over him and I don't say anything. I just keep looking out. I'm like, okay, this is odd. I'm like, is this guy? This is odd. Like, why is this guy sitting next to me? So he sits down, and then he says, he looks over at me for a minute. Then he just keeps looking up. I'll never forget the words. He said, "Hasn't God made a beautiful world?" And I said, I looked at him, I said, "Excuse me? And were you talking to me?" And he's like, "Yeah, hasn't God made a beautiful world?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess he has made a beautiful world." It's like I was like, okay, this is a little odd. And that's all he said. And so then I sat there for maybe another minute or so. I'm like, okay, this is kind of odd. I don't really know this man, what he's here or something. So I got up, I got my small pack on. Now at this point, if you've been up in that region,
Yeah.
you know they have the different huts up there, right?
Yeah, right.
So one of the things I used to do was I used to bring food and supplies up into the hut. So I was, 18 years old. I was in the best of shape,
Right.
a runner and stuff like that. And I was used to bringing 80-pound packs up. So I was a pretty fast hiker. I'd been in some rescues and stuff like that. So I was like, okay. So I remember start hiking along, and I'm hiking along, and I look back, and the guy's just sitting there. He didn't look at me or anything else. Hike for 2.5, maybe 3 hours. Different, trail junctions, different things like that. Come to another ridge, stop, look out. No more than 5, maybe 8 minutes later, all of a sudden this same guy shows up. And I'm like, how did this guy, first of all, he has this big pack on. How did he even find me? I know there was a number of different trail junctions you could have gone.
Yeah.
He wasn't, I remember looking back, like he didn't instantly get
Yeah.
up and follow me or anything.
Yeah, you wouldn't
No. So at this point, and at this one, I'm the only one there. So at this point, I'm getting a little scared. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh boy, what's this guy doing? So all of a sudden, I jump up, I turn, and I say, hold it. Whoa. He said, then he says, wait. I just want to talk to you. I said, just stay back. I don't know what you want from me. He said, I want to share something with you. I said, I don't need anything from you. He said, I want to share something that I believe God has brought me to share something with you. And I said, it couldn't be me. It must be somebody else. He said, no, I really believe it's you. And I said, okay. I said, just stay back a little bit. Just what is it that God would want to share with me? Because I didn't know, I guess there's a God that exists, but it's like I didn't know anything about him. So I said, why do you think it's me? And he said, can I just tell you, what's been happening in my life? And I said, who are you? And his name is Kurt. His name was Kurt Blank. I didn't know it was Kurt Blank. He just said Kurt. And I said, I said, why are you here? And he said, I have to tell you a story. He said, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist pastor. He said, I was down in Pennsylvania. And he said, I'm at my desk, and the Spirit of God came upon me. And he said, he just knew God had spoken to him. He said, you need to go to the White Mountains of New Hampshire. He said, I'd never been to the White Mountains, never been to New Hampshire. He said, you need to go to the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And his wife was like, he tells his wife afterwards, like, go on the White Mountains. And he's like, why are you going up there? We have, you have this appointment, this going on, you have to do this. He's like, no, I need to go to the White Mountains in New Hampshire. God's got me something he needs to do. So he said he packed up his stuff, his hiking stuff, because he'd done some hiking. He drove from Pennsylvania up to New Hampshire. I don't know if he drove I don't know how long he'd been driving. Yeah. And then he just started hiking. And he said, God, show me who you want. He said, I believe you're the person. And I remember telling me, I said, I'm not the guy. You must have the wrong guy. He said, no, I really believe you're the guy. I am here to share the gospel with you. And I remember looking at him just like this and saying, what is the gospel? I'd never heard the gospel before. And he started sharing the gospel with me. And I said, well, look, I have to hike back. I said, I don't know anything about the gospel. I said, I don't really know, and he said, has anybody ever shared what Jesus is, what he's done for you? I said, no, I don't know any of that. I don't really know anything about that. And so we started hiking, and we hiked over the next 7 hours. And during that 7 hours, he shared the gospel. There were questions that I had and everything. And
at this point, you weren't like freaked out, or maybe a little bit.
A little bit.
But somehow you found just this conversation going on, like the road to Emmaus.
Yes, exactly. It was like a road to Emmaus, exactly. And so I came back, and we got back. I remember we got back to the parking lot at Pinkham Notch. We went back to his car. He said, let me give you a Bible, and I'd like you to pray. Would you like to accept the Lord? and I just knew the Spirit of God came upon me. I knew that was
Really
the time.
oh.
I remember looking up, and I remember what time it was, but I remember the sun was just starting to go down. I remember looking and seeing that and saying, God, it was almost like a sunset to a new, so the old was passing away and something new was beginning.
Wow.
I prayed with him. He gave me the Bible. He said, try to find a church up here. And there's a good lesson in this also, because I accepted the Lord, but the environment I was in was a very hedonistic environment. And it was hard. I mean, I would not say that I accepted the Lord, but I had nobody to disciple me.
Yeah, nobody discipled you.
And that was the thing that was missing. So I went back to the University of New Hampshire. I ended up finding that there was another thing that God did. He ended up getting me connected with a campus ministry there, an Assemblies of God church that was on campus. I was discipled by the pastor, and the Lord has brought me to where I am today.
What a remarkable story.
Well, this is...
I mean, you talk about God's, I mean, I've heard some amazing stories, but that's certainly one of them. Just this, God shipping somebody from Pennsylvania.
From Pennsylvania.
Just to get, there's one of my favorite poems. It's called The Hound of Heaven. Have you ever read it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
It's a great poem, and it's the image that God is after you.
Yes.
And and he'll do things like that to get you.
He certainly will.
Wow.
He certainly will. So
that was when you were 18, you said, all this in college?
18, yes,
at
in
University
college.
of New Hampshire.
Yes, that is correct.
And so where'd the journey take you from there?
So the journey took me from there, was this kind of an interesting journey from there. So I ended up meeting my wife at the University of New Hampshire. We ended up moving up to northern New Hampshire.
Was she a Christian?
She was a Christian, yes.
Yeah.
She was in the Methodist faith. She was a Christian. I remember I was getting my master's there, and she was also, and we ended up being in the same class together, an education class. And I remember where I said, well, you had to give like a perspective. We're in a group exercise, and I said, I'm a Christian and I believe this, and she wrote the same type of thing. We had to pass these papers around. And I remember asking her, I said, oh, by the way, would you like to go out sometime? And I'd like to make you dinner. And she thought, like, she didn't catch the make you dinner part. She just said, go out, because I love to cook. I love to cook. So she thought I was taking her out to dinner, and I said, no, let's go to the supermarket. I'm going to buy dinner and go home and make it for you. So it was kind of interesting. And we've been married now for 33 years.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Yes, so we've had a wonderful life together. We ended up moving up to northern New Hampshire, and then for a while, and then my father passed away, and ended up coming back down to the seacoast area of New Hampshire. And then I was working a church in that area, and they really wanted to use the gifts and talents they had for family ministry, and my heart was drawn to family ministry.
What were you doing initially before you went into ministry?
So originally I was a high school teacher.
Oh, teacher, okay.
Yes, and it's kind of work. So I came from being a high school teacher, then I went to being a community college teacher, as a matter of fact, which is kind of interesting. And then I was working in a church also doing family ministry. And so I did that for a number of years, got my seminary degree, and kind of helped.
Good. Where'd you wind up going?
Trinity.
Trinity.
Yeah,
Oh,
yes.
wow. Okay.
So I ended up doing that. And then really just had a heart for working with families and relationships and parenting. And at that point, we were just starting to have a newer family, and we had some hard times. My wife and I had 6 miscarriages. It was very difficult.
Gosh, really?
Yeah, hard times. But the Lord has blessed us with 2 wonderful daughters, and so that's kind of happened. But but there was kind of that the Lord brings us on these paths sometimes, and you don't know where it's all going to go.
And obviously, in the middle of it, it's sometimes pretty painful. What are you doing, God? What's going on?
Exactly.
But sometimes you see later the perspective.
Yeah, and that's what happened. And that's
so you wound up doing pastoral work, but primarily with kind of family ministry.
Yeah, family ministry
different
work.
Churches.
Yes, with different churches doing that. So it's a ministry called Family Builders. I'm still associated with it. There was a gentleman, Willie Batson, who had started the ministry. He had been doing it for about 10 years. And I actually got connected with him too. I was trying to start a family ministry at this church, about a 600-person church. Yeah. Good size for New England.
Where was that?
That was in Durham, New Hampshire.
Durham, okay.
Still involved with the church, Durham Evangelical Church.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Great.
So I was involved with that, and then we ended up, I ended up, contacting him. He was actually in Maine, and I said, hey, can you help us? We've called all over the country, like, someone help us with a family ministry. How do we get one started? he was like, that's what I do. So he came alongside, and as I said, over many years, I was a college professor. Then he ended up retiring. His wife had MS. I ended up taking over that ministry. And
what's it called? Family
Builders.
Family Builders.
So it's a ministry that works in 3 areas of marriage, parenting, and grandparenting.
Oh.
And what's interesting now is that about half the work that we do, up until 6-7 years ago, we didn't even work in the area of grandparenting. Now half the work that we do is with grandparents.
Why is that?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah.
We are going through a crisis in this country right
Yeah.
now. And grandparents, a lot of people don't realize, are the second greatest influencers in kids' lives, next to parents. It's not teachers, it's not coaches, it's not anybody like that. And so grandparents are the ones who I call stepping into the gap.
Yeah.
And also in this state, in the state of Massachusetts, 40% of kids in the state of Massachusetts, 1 through 17, are actually being what they consider raised by grandparents nowadays.
Yeah, I'm not, I mean, just obviously as a pastor and a priest, I mean, I'm constantly encountering, these, parents who become in drug addiction and wind up, they have their children taken away, and it's, I've even done funerals for people who've died, and for the grandparent adopts the children and takes them home. So a lot of tragic stories like that, broken homes, fatherless homes, all those things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the
Wow,
other area we work in.
yeah.
We work in grandparents who are raising grandkids.
Yeah.
We do seminar work we do in that area
Wow.
to specialize how to help churches in this area. It's
I mean, an extraordinary, wonderful ministry that churches can do in this area.
oh, it is. And you know what's so hard?
And also evangelize too through it.
Yes, you can, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Because you could start out a program for grandparents taking care of their grandchildren and bring them to the Lord if they're don't know the Lord.
Oh yes, oh yes. And what's so hard too for the grandparents, imagine this, like we were just helping a couple, imagine being in your mid-70s and all of a sudden you're taking care of a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old within the church setting.
Yeah.
Now, the people in the church are like, are these your kids? Are they, what's going on?
Abraham and Sarah.
Exactly, that's what they're
The
wondering.
kid's name's Isaac.
Yeah. Exactly. So they're wondering a little about that, and and then of course they're like, we try to go to the youth group, and we're there, and we're 20, 30 years older than every other parent here, and so there's a lot of shame involved. There's different pieces that are involved. What happens? So anyway, so that's the grandparents are definitely a very important part of the ministry, and as I said, I'm still somewhat involved in that ministry, and then my main focus really for the last 4 years has been on the New England Mission Foundation.
Right, and that's what you mentioned at the breakfast that I met you at. You
Yes.
gave out and spoke a little bit about the ministry. It's we're going to put this a link on the notes at the end of the service for people who might be interested. But share a little bit about the work of the New England Mission Foundation.
Sure. So what our work that we do is that we like to find and fund innovative, whether it's a church, a ministry, a nonprofit, who are working in the area in New England. We only work in New England and fund in New England for discipleship, evangelism, and church health. Yeah. So those are the 3 areas we want to see. We want to see healthy churches, we want to see people discipled and come to Christ, and we want to see the gospel shared. Yeah. And that's what we do. So we go out, we try to find, we're a small foundation. We're a small family foundation. It was originally started by the Gill. Don Gill.
Well, both Don and Dennis have been on this show.
Okay, there you go.
They're kind of, speaking of patriarchs and grandparents, that's Don Gill, who was of course he died just a couple of years ago, and but I've known him for many, many years.
Well, you probably have some stories you could share about Don Gill.
Well, he was just a very special man and a great, anyway, he also had this kind of vision like you have for your work, this sense of collaborating between churches and building up. And this is, as you know, New England's a rocky soil.
I do know that, yes.
And for the gospel, and it's a fairly secular world, and because you grew up in a pretty secular home.
Oh, yes, I did.
But New England in ways it's hard to explain to people who come from the South. maybe California is the only place worse than New England.
Yes.
But there's still always opportunity. God is chasing people up the White Mountains.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. So, so the work that we do is that we try to really look for people who are doing work in the gospel, kingdom work, and we want to come alongside and support them, and not only support them financially, but we also want to support them. We do training for churches and nonprofits and ministries. We bring consultants up to help with them. We give legal assistance, CPAs. We do a lot of different things to help people, and connections.
Was Don the founder of?
Don, actually, this is the fascinating thing with Don, is that people didn't really know. Don, as you know, he was in ministry, Vision New England, pastor, and so forth. But Don also had a side hobby, and that side hobby was investing. And nobody really knew about this. I mean, it'd be like...
No, I must say I did.
Well, it'd be like, imagine yourself, like all of a sudden, you go to be with the Lord, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, did you know that guy? He had $10 million he did on the side doing investing. Well, it wasn't 10, but anyway, but it was something like that. And so that gave us the seed money to start this foundation to carry on in Don's legacies, to follow on with that. And his son, Dennis, is on our board. Yes, and very involved. So, but as I said, we are looking for those opportunities to really create more seeds for the gospel.
Yeah, I was looking through your booklet that you passed out the other day, and just the rich variety of ministries. A few of these I know of. I'm very good friends with the Boston Fellows.
Kelly?
Yeah. Kelly Madden. Matter of fact, I brought him into the Episcopal priesthood. I haven't gotten him to swim the Tiber, but he was a he spent his life Campus Crusade. And then he started coming to my parish. I was rector of a big Episcopal church in Hamilton.
Oh, wonderful.
Near Gordon College.
Yes.
And anyway, but he's doing a wonderful ministry. And Clapham sect, the Clapham.
Oh, yes.
Because, that's a very famous part of Anglican history, the Clapham, the evangelical Anglicans who fought against slavery and all that.
Oh, yeah, Clapham servants.
Yeah.
And the work that they do.
Very interesting. And so quite a variety of wonderful gospel ministries of discipleship, evangelism, social justice, really wonderful work.
Yeah, that's what our focus is. And as I said, we are a small foundation. We're looking to grow larger, so if there's anybody who'd like to come.
And billions to it.
Maybe not billions, but we'll even take thousands or hundreds.
Well, we would like to get a lot of rich people out there.
Yes.
And helping them invest in the gospel. It's interesting, my son runs his own company, which is a impact investment company, and its primary job is to get Christian. It's specifically Christian in terms of getting Christians, philanthropists, Christian philanthropists, Christian foundations, to really invest in their investments, to have a vision of making sure their investments. They're not raising money to support a ministry here, and then they're investing money in things that are contrary to the very mission they're trying to raise money for.
Of course.
And so that's why it's called impact investing, making sure your investment itself has an impact.
Wow.
For the gospel, and not just what you spend the fruit of your investment on. So,
well, I would love to talk to him sometime.
Yeah.
That'd be very interesting.
He lives in D.C., but he travels around this. It's kind of a new vision, I think, among a lot of Christian leaders to really pay more attention to those kinds of issues. So what's an average day for you?
An average day for me is really traveling around New England. I meet with a lot of different grantees who are, different ministries, different people who are looking to come to us for grants. And so whether it's lunch, whether it's coffee, sometimes it's meeting someone at a conference center, sometimes it's over Zoom, and it's really just meeting and talking and finding out, hey, I always love to ask the question, how can I help you today? How can I help you? And people... So
it must be great. You kind of get to see a lot of what the Lord's doing, and probably in a lot of small and hidden ways. But that God is moving here and there in the hearts of people, where people have real passion for the gospel.
It's wonderful. As I said, I always feel I have one of the greatest jobs in the world because I get to go and people are, how can we, if you think about money, and you think about money, Jürgen, what is money? I like to say money is just fuel for ministry.
Yeah,
that's
right.
all it is.
That's
So
right,
how
right,
can we help give you more fuel?
Yeah.
How can we encourage you?
Yeah, you probably don't get too many. I mean, I suppose you do have to spend some time raising money for the fund, right? I don't know.
We do, and we do have a very good financial advisor
Yeah,
who helps us do the investing. We've been.
But your job is mostly giving it away.
It's giving it away.
So that's a nice job. You probably don't get too many people hanging up on you.
No, I don't. Well, that's a wonderful thing.
You get in the living room much easier than the person looking for money.
It is funny because sometimes people will say, "Oh, well, yeah, we want, what do you get?" Like they think there's some kind of catch. I'm like, "There's no catch. We just want to come and we want
find out what the Lord's
we want to
doing
help you and bless you." Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me a few of just in the last year, you've discovered some new interesting things that have caught your curiosity.
For some of the ministry opportunities?
Right.
Well, one of the ones that I know has been really, we've seen I would say an impact for the kingdom, has been Cornerstone Creative in Gloucester, Massachusetts. So what Cornerstone does is that they work with teens. They're working with teens who are coming out of prison.
Oh, wow.
And then they train them. They do job training. They have a large woodworking shop. And they're taking these teens, and they're not only training them in just woodworking, but they're also training them in interpersonal skills, budgeting, all kinds of life skills. And they have a great success rate.
Does that come out of a particular church or?
No, they're tied together with a lot of other churches. They also work with Straight Ahead Ministries. I don't know if you've heard of Straight Ahead.
No, I haven't.
So they're another kind of a large national ministry,
Yeah.
but they have certainly out of New England. And but they really have made a wonderful impact for the Lord in these men and women's lives.
Wow.
Who are coming out of teens who are coming out of prison. So.
I wonder, I mean, I've been a priest now for over 50 years, and I've seen the landscape, how much it's changed. And I do more and more think that there's such brokenness and needs, I go back to your grandparents and all, that maybe the best way is to just go where there's really hurting people. Mm-hmm. In a way, that's what Jesus did, going
Yes.
for the marginalized people, the tax collectors, the people who were rejected, the people who were sick, and they're the ones who began to respond, the poorest people, to the gospel. And maybe that where the society's gotten secular in many ways, but there's still so many needy people, and to see that as an opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
where.
Yeah, this is
Christ in the mouth of the poorest. Come to me. Come to me.
Definitely.
It sounds like that's what you're doing in all kinds of creative ways.
We are, as a matter of fact. And the other one, like just a few weeks ago, we were down in Rhode Island, the Rhode Island Mission, right in Providence, and just seeing firsthand, the person who's Sean, who works there with a number of other staff. They're there, I would say, right at ground zero. I mean, working with prostitutes, working with the homeless, working with people to really help share the gospel with them, and really meeting them, the people who, quote unquote, nobody else wants to work with and deal. And it's just so powerful to see the work that the Lord is doing.
Wow.
So, and we want to come right alongside and support that.
Right.
So.
Well, we're actually out of time, but
Okay.
that was a wonderful, first of all, a wonderful testimony. What mountain was it on?
That was on Mount Adams.
Adams.
Adams,
So that's
yes.
a great mountain.
Yes,
I've
yes.
climbed that many times, including in the middle of the winter.
Okay,
So,
wonderful.
So although my hiking days are mostly behind me, unfortunately, at 76. Well, blessings.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for your wonderful testimony and the work you're doing. Again, we will post on the line item, New England Mission Foundation will give a website, a link for you. And if you're interested in learning more about their work, I hope you'll connect with them. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you've been inspired both by the story, and as I said, it's not just always the conversion, but the fruit of one's life. Jesus says the real test is the fruit of life, and thank you for Jere's conversion, but also the rich fruit of his work. And God bless you as well.